It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of May 13th, 1994. Now, last time around I said we had 5 movies to look at. Turns out there were 6 because I saw another movie on there that was not in the previous 2 weeks. Apparently this was the 3rd weekend it came out. It got a huge, wider release. We'll delve into that one when we get to it, but let's start off by looking at the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is the late Brandon Lee starring in The Crow. So something that you'll notice on here that I didn't notice until I looked at the credits, Al Franken of Saturday Night Live co-wrote this movie, and I thought that was pretty interesting because I've seen this movie before, and I never put it together that he was one of the co-writers on this movie. And like I said, I've seen this movie before, and I gotta say the movie is a really solid film. It's a movie about this couple who has this great life. Their family life is going good, and then Meg Ryan's character ends up going back into is getting back into alcoholism, and she's had this drinking problem for the longest time, and she's been able to keep it from disrupting her family. But then it comes to the point where it comes back in, and so the movie becomes kind of this thing of how do you keep this family together while also trying to keep these deep things going on in your life from ruining it. And it's a pretty good movie. It's a movie that easily could have gone into predictable territory, cliche territory, but it really doesn't do that. It's a movie that really does work all the way through. I think Andy Garcia and Meg Ryan are great playing the couple in this, and the family that they have is very good. A lot of great performances overall in here. You got them, Lauren Tom, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Ellen Burstyn's also in the movie. It's a really good movie. It's a really well-made film. It doesn't make when the emotional moments happen in this movie, they are very well earned. They aren't moments that feel like they're being manipulated on you. They aren't moments that feel like they're being forced onto you, it's like to get something out of you. They all feel very genuine, and it does feel very good to see a movie like this if you're going through a lot of the same issues that the characters are going through in this movie. It's a very well-made film. Fantastic film overall. I really enjoyed it. It was one of the big surprises that I ever saw in terms of these movies from back in the past. It's a movie that really is very well enjoyable. I can't recommend it enough. When a Man Loves a Woman, go check it out. So, with that said, now let's move on to the next movie, and that is Spike Lee's Crooklyn. As I've talked about before, I am a very big Spike Lee fan, and Crooklyn was one of his movies that I got to very late on. I heard a lot of mixed things about it, most notably that this was sort of the beginning of somewhat of a creative lull with Lee, after a lot of his first films turned out to be really good. I will agree that Crooklyn is kind of the lower end of these good, not great movies, but it's not a terrible movie by any means. It just doesn't really have a whole lot of story to tell. I think what really sticks out about this movie are the performances. I mean, you put Alfre Woodard and Delroy Lindo in anything, and they can usually up the quality of a movie big time. You got this young actress, Zelda Harris, who would later go on to star in The Babysitters Club. She's very good in the movie, and then she later reteamed with Spike Lee again for He Got Game, which came out a few years later. The movie overall is very good. It's a good movie. It's an enjoyable film. There are a lot of elements to enjoy about it, largely in the performances. I think the story is a little too all over the place to fully appreciate the film's purpose, and like I said, it's not a terrible movie, but it's nowhere near up to the levels that Spike Lee had up to this point. I mean, he makes Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, Jungle Fever, these great movies that have stood the test of time, and this movie doesn't have that same lasting power, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. It's not one of Spike Lee's best movies I can recommend to people, but if you like his filmography, this is something that's good for a one-time watch. Maybe not something you'd want to watch over and over again, but I'm glad I saw it. I think it could have been a whole lot better, but as it is, it's perfectly fine for what it is. So, that's Crooklyn. Now let's move on to the next movie, which is, if I can get it right here, Paul Rodriguez starring in A Million to One. Honestly, Paul Rodriguez is kind of a mixed bag for me. Sometimes he can be really funny, but most of the time I haven't seen anything that made me say, this guy truly is a great, great talent, and this movie doesn't really help it either. I think the movie is trying its best to be a modern take of this Mark Twain story. The Million Pound Note is what it was called, but I don't know. It feels a little too direct-to-video-ish for its own good. I'm actually surprised it actually got a theatrical release because it really doesn't feel like a movie that should have gone to theaters. It looks like a movie that should have gone straight to video or on television. But, I mean, I can't say it's one of the worst things I've ever seen, but it's certainly not something I'm going to remember after watching it. So, that's A Million to One. Let's move on to the next movie, and that is Widow's Peak. Haven't really seen this one, so I can't really comment on it too much. But it looks like it could be. It looks like it could be pretty funny. It's a movie that feels like, kind of like has a Knives Out type of vibe to it. And like, it's not the typical type of comedy. It's one of those comedies where you got to really pay attention to what's going on to really understand a lot of the humor in there. And good cast overall: Mia Farrow, Joan Plowright, Natasha Richardson, Jim Broadbent, and I mean, could be decent, but it's not something I'm going to rush out to see right away. Just acknowledging that it came out this weekend. So, quick one on that one, Widow's Peak. Let's get on to the last movie, and that is Sissy Spacek in Trading Mom. Another movie kind of like A Million to One that feels like a direct-to-video movie blown up for the big screen. Except in this case, it's Sissy Spacek, who won an Oscar for Coal Miner's Daughter. And in the 14 years since then, this is what amounts to it on the big screen, I guess. But I don't know. Just this idea, it could work under better writers. It could work under a better situation. But I don't know. Making Sissy Spacek all the moms in this movie, it doesn't really amount to anything. She's not really that great of a person that can play multiple characters in one movie. I mean, she's a great actress, but you're asking her to play multiple characters in these different roles, and sometimes sometimes that can work, but other times it doesn't. This is one of those times where it doesn't really work. It's a movie that really is trying a little too hard. It's a little bit corny at times, and the jokes just aren't there. It's just not a funny movie whatsoever. It's a movie that's instantly forgettable, and by that trailer you could definitely see why it's instantly forgettable. So, anyway, that's Trading Mom. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. The next time we meet, we'll finally jump into the 1994 summer movie season, which begins with Mel Gibson, Jodie Foster, and James Garner in Richard Donner's adaptation of Maverick. And we also have Gus Van Sant's Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. So 2 movies to look at next time around. We'll do that on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.